The first time Logan Hayes heard someone scream inside the transit control tower, he thought it was the radio. Then the glass shattered behind him. Red emergency lights strobed across the monitors, turning maps of Chicago into pulsing veins of danger. Every bus, every train, every crossing signal on the south side seemed to be lit up at once, alarms fighting each other for attention. "Just keep it going," the woman behind him shouted, fingers flying over a stolen laptop perched on the console. Her blouse was torn at the shoulder, dark hair stuck to her face with sweat. Logan planted his boots between her and the stairwell door, gripping the heavy steel alignment bar like a bat. He could hear footsteps pounding up toward them. 3 sets, maybe 4. "If they reach this floor, we're done," she said. "The files won't upload in time." Below, out past the fogged windows, he could see the orange glow of the bus yard, and beyond that, the faint blinking lights of the rail lines. Somewhere out there, his 11-year-old son was asleep at a friend's house, on the same side of town these men were trying to cripple. Logan rolled his shoulders once, feeling the old ache from shrapnel that never quite healed. "Then I guess," he muttered, lifting the bar as the door handle began to turn. "They don't reach this floor. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world. Because to understand how a tired, grease-stained mechanic ended up guarding a city's lifeline with nothing but an old piece of steel and stubbornness, we have to go back to a Tuesday night that was supposed to be ordinary." Logan Hayes was 39 years old, and most days he felt every mile of it. By day, he was Mr. Hayes to a handful of 7th graders who knew him only as the guy who showed up for every parent conference and never missed a band concert. By night, he was the invisible man at the South Side Transit Depot, the one who crawled under buses at 2 a.m., who knew each engine by the sound of its cough, who kept the city's aging fleet rolling even when the budget said it shouldn't. Home was a cramped rental on the edge of Bridgeport, with peeling paint and a view of the alley. Inside it held everything that mattered his son Eli, a kitchen table covered in math worksheets, and a picture of a woman with laughing eyes taped above the sink. His wife Jenna had been gone for 4 years now, taken by a drunk driver on a night that still woke him up in a cold sweat. The army had stamped "honorably discharged" on his papers and sent him home with a limp, a box of medals he kept in a drawer, and skills nobody wanted to pay extra for: risk assessment, structural failure, how to keep people alive when metal and concrete turned against them. So he went where he was needed, even if nobody noticed. He tightened bolts. He patched lines. He did the kind of work that only got attention when it failed. His world had narrowed to simple rules: keep Eli safe, keep the buses running, don't make waves. He packed Eli's lunch in the evenings, checked homework, texted the neighbor to make sure someone knew where his boy was if the shift ran long. Then he drove across town to the depot, punched in, and disappeared into the smell of diesel and cold steel. That Tuesday night started no different. The air was wet and heavy, the sky the color of dirty cotton. Logan walked the rows of silent buses with his clipboard and flashlight ticking off unit numbers, listening for anything that didn't sound right. In the distance, freight trains moaned their way through the yards, a sound he'd grown up with. He was halfway through inspecting a brake line when he noticed the black SUV parked just beyond the chain-link fence engine, idling headlights off. Not a city vehicle. Not a cop car. It hadn't been there 20 minutes earlier. Logan frowned, wiped his hands on a rag, and watched as a woman in a slate-gray suit stepped out of the building's side door, moving too fast for someone just working late. She glanced over her shoulder once, then again. The SUV's door opened. A man in a dark coat stepped toward her, not quite close enough to touch, but close enough that every instinct from Logan's old life started ringing like an alarm. Most nights he ignored what didn't belong to him. That night, something made him set the clipboard down, and start walking toward the gate. He didn't know it yet, but that was the moment when his small, careful life shifted, when the man who fixed machines for a living would be dragged into a fight for a whole city, all because he couldn't walk past someone who looked that scared. Logan quickened his pace boots, splashing through shallow puddles left by a passing drizzle. The depot's floodlights buzzed overhead, throwing long skeletal shadows across the asphalt. The woman in the slate-gray suit reached the SUV's passenger door, then hesitated, as if some last instinct screamed at her not to get inside. The man in the overcoat leaned in and said something low and sharp. She flinched. Before Logan could get close enough to see more, the SUV door slammed. The engine growled, and the vehicle pulled away from the fence, heading toward the outer lot. Logan stood still, pulse humming. Something about the exchange nagged him the way she never looked him in the eye, the way her hand shook, the way the man kept touching his ear, as though someone else was listening. He took a slow breath, forced himself back toward the maintenance bay. He had brake lines to check logs, to sign a job to finish. Curiosity didn't feed Eli, and it sure didn't keep the city buses running, but the unease followed him, settling in his chest like cold metal. Inside, Foreman Rick Dorsey was waiting by the tool cabinet, thick around the middle, red in the face, and always looking for someone beneath him to blame. Hayes. Rick's voice was a bark meant to sound authoritative, but mostly came off irritated. "You strolling around the yard for fun, or you planning to get some work done tonight?" Logan wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Just checking the perimeter. Saw a vehicle parked where it shouldn't be." Rick snorted. "You're a mechanic, not security. Leave the thinking to the people above your pay grade." It wasn't the words that stung, it was the tone. As if Logan hadn't spent years keeping the depot running through budget cuts and skeleton crews. As if he were some clueless rookie instead of the man everyone called when the brakes locked up at 3 a.m. or when a bus rolled into the bay hissing steam from places it shouldn't. He let it go. He always let it go. But Rick wasn't done. He jerked his thumb toward a stack of intake forms. Unit 742 came back early. Suspension's shot. Get it on the lift. And don't take all night like you usually do. Usually do. Never mind that Logan was the fastest and most thorough man they had. He nodded, keeping his breath even. "I'll take care of it." Rick smirked as he walked away, tossing over his shoulder. "Try not to mess anything up. I'm already dealing with enough screw-ups this week." When he was gone, Logan stood alone in the humming bay. He could feel the old frustration coil inside him, the quiet kind that never exploded, just tightened until it carved its own shape in a man's ribs. He grabbed his tools, rolled the cart toward Unit 742, and tried to lose himself in the work. But his mind drifted. Back to the SUV. Back to the woman who looked like she wanted to run, but had nowhere to go. Back to the man who kept touching his ear like someone was feeding him orders. He shook off the thought. Eli came first. Always. An hour later, as he tightened a bolt near the brake assembly, he felt his phone buzz. He wiped a glove across his jeans and checked the screen. A message from Mrs. Holloway, the mother of Eli's best friend, where Eli was sleeping over. "Everything okay?" Eli said. "You sounded tired tonight. He wanted to make sure you weren't upset." Logan closed his eyes briefly. The kid felt everything too deeply. Since Jenna died, Eli had grown extra sensitive to shifts in his father's mood. Even small ones. Logan always tried to hide the long nights, the stress, the worry that came with every unexpected bill. But kids sensed things. He typed a reply. "All good. Long shift. Tell him I'm proud of him. I'll see him in the morning." He set the phone aside and rested his hands on the cold metal of the lift. He didn't like that Eli worried about him. The boy carried shadows he shouldn't have to carry. Logan tried to be light for him, even when life felt heavy as iron. He pushed back to work. By 3 in the morning, the bay had quieted. Only the distant hum of generators and the occasional rattle of the repair shed doors echoed through the depot. Logan had just lowered Unit 742 when the office door slammed open. Rick again. Of course. Hayes. His voice bounced across the concrete. You got a minute? Logan wiped his brow. What's wrong now? Rick stalked toward him, waving a clipboard. The city wants tomorrow's fleet up early. That means fewer buses can be out of commission. You've still got 3 units waiting for inspection, and you're behind schedule. I'm on pace, Logan said calmly. I logged everything. Rick thrust the clipboard into his chest. You think you get special treatment because you used to be military. I don't care what medals you've got in your drawer. Here you work at the speed I tell you. The words hit harder than they should have. He hadn't mentioned his service. Rick must have dug around probably to find ammunition for moments just like this. I'm doing the job, Logan said. Quiet. Controlled. That's the problem, Rick snapped. You do it your way, not mine. And I'm done cleaning up after you. Cleaning up Logan was the one who fixed Rick's mistakes when he signed off on faulty buses just to keep numbers looking good. But pointing that out would only make things worse. Rick leaned in, his breath sour with coffee. One more slip. Hayes, 1 late inspection, 1 unfinished log, and I'll bump you to part-time. Try raising your kid on that. Logan felt the air leave his chest. Not a punch, but close. The kind of blow aimed at the places he was most vulnerable. Eli. Everything always came back to Eli. He kept his voice steady. Understood. Rick waited, probably hoping for pushback. When he didn't get it, he huffed and stomped out. Logan turned back to the bus, jaw tight. His pulse thudded in his ears. He had taken worse in uniform. Orders barked. Insults thrown. Lives weighing on every choice he made. But this felt different. Smaller. Meaner. Like being forced to stand still while someone scraped away at his dignity inch by inch. He wanted to shrug it off, let the anger drain out. But tonight, something lingered. The weight of the woman in the gray suit, the SUV, Rick's threats, Eli's worry, all of it stacking on his shoulders like sandbags. By the time the sun hinted at dawn, Logan finished his logs and dragged himself into the break room. He poured coffee, burnt stale, but warm. He needed warm. He'd barely taken a sip when chatter crackled from the dispatch radio. Transit Control Priority Channel. We've got a systems anomaly on the South Rail grid. Repeat unexplained signal interference. Another voice cut in. Also seeing irregular commands on the bus routing software. Could be mechanical or intentional. Intentional. The words sliced through the room. Logan lowered his cup. 2 more techs wandered in, whispering. Crazy Night 1 muttered. City's saying some kind of breach. Rick barged in, eyes wide for the first time that night. Hayes, he barked. They want all senior mechanics up at the control tower. Now. I thought I was slow and useless, Logan said before he could stop himself. Rick's jaw clenched. Don't make this difficult. They need bodies. Move. Bodies. Not skill. Not experience. Just bodies. But Logan felt something colder coil in his gut. A breach in the routing software. Strange signals. The SUV. The frightened woman. He didn't believe in coincidences. Not after the things he'd seen in Afghanistan. He grabbed his jacket and followed Rick out toward the stairs leading to the elevated control tower. Every step felt heavier, as though he were climbing toward something that had been building all night. Halfway up, his phone buzzed again. He checked it quickly, expecting a message from Mrs. Holloway. Instead, it was from an unknown number. Just 3 words, "Don't trust them." Logan stopped cold. Rick turned back. "You coming or what?" Logan pocketed the phone, his pulse suddenly hard enough to shake his breath. The air felt thinner. The night felt sharper. He pushed forward up the last steps toward the glass walls glowing above them. He didn't know who sent the message. He didn't know who them referred to. But he knew one thing. Whatever waited behind those glass doors, it wasn't just a mechanical failure. Something was cracking open, and the pressure, every insult, every threat, every strange warning was about to give way. He stepped into the tower, and the door shut behind him with a click that sounded too final to ignore. The moment Logan stepped into the control tower, he felt it, the wrongness in the air, sharp as ozone before a lightning strike. The floor-to-ceiling windows glowed with city light, but inside every face was tight with confusion or buried in a frantic blur of keystrokes. The long console that stretched across the room, normally a hum of steady transit updates, was now a battlefield of flashing warnings. He didn't need technical training to understand the danger. Every bus route on the south side flickered red. Several commuter rail lines pulsed with alerts he'd never seen before. Entire districts were going offline, then surging back with scrambled data. It wasn't a glitch. It was coordinated. Rick shoved past him. "Don't just stand there, get to panel 4. Maybe you can fix what you broke out in the yard." Logan ignored the jab. He moved slowly, deliberately, letting his eyes map the scene. Too many people shouting. Too many overlapping commands. Too many windows opening and closing without clear control. Someone wasn't just disrupting the system, they were steering it. A supervisor pointed at a screen showing Route 55, a major line running past 3 schools, 2 hospitals, and half a dozen busy intersections. "It's rerouting itself." "Why the hell is it bypassing the safety checkpoints?" a tech replied, voice cracking. "It's not taking commands from us. It's taking commands from somewhere else. Somewhere else." Logan's pulse thudded. The SUV, the woman, the urgency in her eyes, the message, "Don't trust them." His phone buzzed again in his pocket, almost taunting, but he didn't check it. Not yet. The supervisor pointed toward the back. "Somebody find the route before this spreads to rail. If those signal controls go offline during morning inbound," he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Thousands of lives moved on those tracks. Then the screen on panel 3 changed. A small flickering alert popped up: unauthorized access rail junction 16, the largest intersection of commuter lines in the county. If commands were being fed into that switching station, it could cause a collision or derailment before dawn. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the alert. All those blinking red lines, those weren't glitches. They were pathways. And someone was deliberately carving through them. Rick's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. "We're going to lose the grid." Logan stepped closer. "Show me the diagnostic feed on Junction 16. Rick scoffed. "You don't have clearance." But the supervisor, desperate, waved at the nearest tech. "Put it up." The tech tapped a few keys, and a new window opened. Code that should have been clean and uniform crawled across the screen in jittering fragments, overwritten commands, slipping in like poison. Several pressure gauges spiked into the danger zone. Logan leaned in, heart pounding. "That's not a system error. Someone's feeding bad signals into the main board." The supervisor said, "We know that. What we don't know is how to stop it." "Find the injection point," Logan said. "Find out where the commands are entering." "It's already in the firmware," a tech interrupted. "The system thinks the intruder traffic is authentic." A cold weight settled in Logan's gut. Firmware attacks weren't quick hacks. They took planning access hardware. Someone was doing this from inside the city's infrastructure or very close to it. A second alert chimed. Collision risk 3 minutes. Commuter line 27 inbound on unverified signal. People froze. 3 minutes. Too little time to reroute manually. Too little time to reach the site. Too little time to warn conductors who were already in motion. Logan felt something inside him tighten. It was the same feeling he had the night he lost Jenna. The same feeling on the patrol when the convoy took a hit and he'd crawled through fire and twisted metal trying to reach the radio. The same feeling when he woke up in the hospital and found that bravery didn't fix everything. But sometimes it fixed enough. He snapped his gaze to the underside of the console. Who's got access to the physical override unit? The supervisor blinked. Override? This is software. No. Logan cut in. When the main router fails, the system defaults to hardware interrupts. That box right there. He pointed to a locked steel panel near the floor, something no one ever used anymore. It still carries direct signal priority. If someone can inject commands, we can block them at the choke point. Rick barked a laugh. You think you can fix a citywide cyber attack with a power strip and duct tape? Logan crouched, ignoring him. I need the key. We don't use it, a tech said. It's in storage. No time, Logan muttered. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a thin piece of metal, a tension wrench he always kept on him. Rick scoffed. You going to pick a city lock now? Great. Fantastic. We're all dead. But Logan wasn't listening. His hands moved with instinct memory, guiding every shift of pressure. 2 seconds. 3. 4. A quiet click. The panel swung open. Inside sat a nest of wiring outdated circuit boards and a row of manual switches that looked untouched for a decade. But there was also something else. Something new. A small black device was clipped onto the main board. A signal repeater. Someone had installed it physically. Logan's breath caught. This is it. This is where they broke in. The supervisor paled. Pull it! Logan reached forward and Rick grabbed his arm. You pull the wrong thing and the entire grid collapses. Logan yanked his arm free. If we don't disable it, a train collides in 2 minutes. No. Rick blocked the panel with his body. Not my call. Not without higher authorization. Logan stared at him, incredulous. We don't have time for authorization, Rick jabbed a finger at him. You so much as touch that board and you're fired. A fire roared through Logan's chest, a deep, primal fury mixed with fear for every life on those trains. But it wasn't Rick's threat that pushed him. It was the face he saw in his mind Eli, at 11 years old, smiling with the same crooked grin Jenna used to have. If Eli grew up in a city where nobody stepped up, where everyone waited for permission, while catastrophe unfolded, then what kind of man was Logan teaching him to be? His hands stopped shaking. His breath steadied. And he made his choice. Logan grabbed Rick by the shoulder and slid him aside, not violently but firmly enough that the foreman stumbled. Gasps echoed through the room. He reached into the panel, braced his fingers around the repeater and pulled. Sparks crackled. The lights flickered. A low rumble shook the tower floor as the system bucked under the sudden interruption. 3 alerts blinked out, then 4, then 8. A tech yelled, "Collision risk down signals are realigning." Another shouted, "Rail junction 16 is stabilizing manual controls back online." The supervisor sagged against the console relief breaking across his face. You stopped it!" Rick glared at Logan, red-faced with fury. "You're finished, Hayes. Finished, I'm reporting you for." But the room wasn't looking at Rick. They were looking at Logan. At the man who stepped up when the people with titles froze. At the mechanic who moved with the calm certainty of someone who'd seen chaos before and refused to let it win again. The supervisor stepped forward. "If he hadn't acted, we'd be prepping for casualties right now." Rick sputtered. "But he ignored protocol. He saved hundreds of lives," the supervisor said. "I'll take that over protocol." Logan didn't bask in the moment. He didn't feel heroic. He felt the aftershock of adrenaline shaking his bones. He sank to one knee and steadied himself against the console. His phone buzzed again. He finally checked it. A message from the unknown number. "They know you pulled the device. Leave the tower. Now." Logan's stomach turned to stone. Someone out there was watching more closely than he realized. Someone who didn't want heroes tonight. He rose slowly, glancing out the window. Down in the dim lot below, a black SUV crept along the perimeter of the depot, moving with purpose. In the control tower, people were celebrating, stunned, grateful. But Logan's breath tightened. This wasn't over. Someone had just discovered he could interfere with whatever they were planning next. And the moment he saw the SUV's headlights angle upward toward the tower, he knew. The danger he just stopped was nothing compared to the one coming straight for him. For a long moment, no one in the control tower moved. The sirens on the screens faded from red to yellow, then to the muted green of a system slowly knitting itself back together. It felt like the entire room exhaled at once. People leaned against consoles, shoulders slumping with relief that bordered on disbelief. Logan stayed crouched beside the open panel, breathing through the tremor in his hands. He could taste metal in the air, fear and adrenaline mixing with the faint tang of ozone from the sparks. The repeater lay beside him, a charred piece of hardware that looked too small to have nearly wrecked half the city's transit grid. Someone whispered, "He did it." Another voice, louder this time. Holy hell, he actually stopped it. The supervisor stepped forward slowly, as if approaching someone he didn't quite understand. "Logan, how did you know to do that?" Logan didn't answer. He was listening to his heartbeat, to the buzzing lights, to footsteps outside the tower. Something was wrong beyond the alarms. A pressure he couldn't name pressed against the back of his ribs. Rick's voice tore through the moment. "This is ridiculous. He endangered the entire system. He ignored protocol. He assaulted a superior. He saved hundreds of people." A tech snapped. "He got lucky." Rick spat. "That's all." But even he didn't sound convinced. Logan rose slowly. He wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving smears of carbon and grease. He scanned the windows, the stairwell, the pathway leading up to the tower. He could almost feel the SUV below creeping closer, waiting for him to make the wrong move. He kept his voice steady. "We need to lock this building down." The supervisor frowned. "Why the system's stabilizing?" "That wasn't all they were trying to do," Logan said. "They're not finished." "How the hell would you know that?" Rick demanded. Logan finally looked at him. It wasn't anger in his eyes, just a tired kind of truth he'd been carrying for years. "Because I've seen this before," he said quietly. "Just not here. Not like this." The room stilled again. Someone behind him murmured, "Seen what before?" Logan didn't want to explain. Not here. Not now. His past wasn't something he shared, not with co-workers, not with supervisors, not with the world. Most days he kept it buried so deeply he barely believed it himself. But the tower felt too small, too fragile. And the footsteps outside were getting closer. The supervisor stepped forward. "Logan, what exactly did you do before you came to the depot?" He didn't answer right away. He kept scanning the windows. He wasn't ready to turn around and let them see what those memories did to his face. But the question hung there heavy and expectant. He finally spoke. I was Army. Yeah. But not just a mechanic. Before that, I worked with a rapid response engineering unit. We handled sabotage, infrastructure breaches, foreign signal interference, anything that could take down an entire base or city sector. People exchanged looks, some stunned, some disbelieving. Rick scoffed. Come on, you've been crawling under buses for the last decade. If you were some kind of specialist, why would you end up here? And there it was, the question Logan had asked himself on nights when the silence felt like punishment. He didn't flinch. My wife died. My son needed someone steady. Military life wasn't steady, so I walked away. The room softened. Even Rick faltered. Logan's hand brushed the edge of the open panel. But systems don't change much even when the uniforms do. Sabotage has a smell, a rhythm. Whoever planted that device knows what they're doing, and they won't stop because I pulled one repeater. The supervisor swallowed. So, what are we actually dealing with? Logan opened his mouth to answer, but the intercom crackled. Tower control. This is Depot Gate. We've got unknown vehicles approaching multiple no-city plates. People stiffened. Someone cursed under their breath. Logan stepped toward the window just as 3 SUVs rolled into view, their headlights slicing across the lot like searching blades. They moved with an eerie calm. No sirens, no warnings, just silent intention. Rick backed away from the glass. What the hell is this? Logan's jaw tightened. It's not police, and it's not transit authority. The supervisor turned to him. Do you know them? No, Logan said. But they know me. His words landed like a weight. The supervisor took a breath. Okay. Everyone lock the doors, now. People rushed to secure the tower, but Rick intercepted Logan before he could move. His voice shook with something between fear and rage. You brought this here. You and whatever past you decided to hide. Logan didn't raise his voice. I didn't bring anything. Trouble was already here. I just saw it. Rick hesitated. Then, in a near whisper, Are we safe? Logan met his eyes. Not if we stay here. The supervisor overheard and hurried over. What do you mean, this tower is secure? No building is secure when the people coming know how to bypass infrastructure, Logan said. They got into the transit grid. They can get into this tower. A shudder went through the room. A tech pressed her hands to her headphones. Sir, gate control's gone offline. The supervisor's face drained of color. Offline how? Like, physically. The cameras just shut down. Another tech called out. Cell service is dropping. Logan's blood ran cold. They're cutting comms. Someone near the back whispered, Why? Why go to all this trouble? He didn't want to say it aloud, but the truth didn't care about comfort. Because they needed the system vulnerable, Logan said. And I made it harder for them. A heavy silence followed. Rick stepped forward again, and for once there was no derision in his voice. Only fear. What do we do? Logan wasn't their supervisor. He wasn't in charge. He was a night shift mechanic who fixed busted transmissions and fought with rusted bolts. But right now everybody was looking at him, and he didn't have the luxury of pretending he didn't know what to do. We need to get everyone out, Logan said. Quietly, while those vehicles are focused on the tower. They want me, not you. A few people flinched at that, but they didn't argue. The supervisor nodded. There's a back stairwell, concealed from the main lot. We can move staff out that way. Rick swallowed. What about you? Logan turned back toward the window. The SUVs were fanning out now, forming a perimeter. Whoever was inside wasn't rushing. They were waiting, watching. I'll stay, he said. No, the supervisor said instantly. I won't let you. Logan offered a small, tired smile. It's not your call. They came because of me. If everyone stays, more people get hurt. If I stay, maybe it ends differently. People didn't like it, but they understood it. That was when one of the younger operators, barely 23, whispered, "You're the kind of person they send into disasters, aren't you?" Logan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The supervisor grabbed his shoulder. "If you walk out of this alive, Logan Hayes, I'll personally see to it you never crawl under another bus again. We'll find a place where your skills actually mean something." Logan didn't reply. Praise had never sat well with him, but he nodded once. A quiet promise that if he survived the next hour, he'd at least think about a life bigger than the one he'd resigned himself to. The tower lights flickered. A metallic clang echoed up the outside beams. Something was climbing. The supervisor ushered the staff toward the back stairwell. Rick stayed behind for a second, staring at Logan like he was finally seeing someone he'd overlooked for years. I was wrong about you," Rick said quietly. "About a lot of things." Logan offered a faint smile. "Happens." Rick hesitated, then hurried after the others. Within seconds, the tower fell silent. Just Logan, the hum of the consoles, and the faint tap-tap of metal against metal from outside. He exhaled once, steadying his breath. Then he shut down the remaining lights, leaving only the glow of the control screens behind him. The room darkened, shadows deepening across the consoles. The city spread out below like a sea of fragile stars. He checked his phone again. Another message had arrived. "They're coming for you, but there's a chance to stop this. Look in the maintenance closet, floor panel 3. His pulse kicked hard. He crossed the room, opened the small closet, and knelt beside the panel. Beneath it lay something he had hoped never to see again. Something that connected his past with the threat unfolding around him. A piece of technology he knew far too well. And when he lifted it into the dim tower light, he understood this was no random sabotage. Someone inside the city had engineered this. Someone who knew him. Someone who wanted him involved. The stakes shifted again, sharper, deeper than before. Whatever came next, he wouldn't be running from it. He'd be walking straight into it. The device in Logan's hands felt heavier than metal, heavier than memory. It was military grade, a prototype he'd worked on years ago before he'd chosen a quieter life. Whoever planted it knew exactly what it could do, and exactly what it would mean when he found it. Outside, the tapping on the tower frame grew louder, but the stairwell door below burst open before whoever was climbing made it through. Officers in transit uniforms rushed in, real ones this time, not the silent shadows from the SUVs. They swept the room with raised flashlights, and when they saw Logan crouched beside the open panel, they lowered their lights. One of them stepped forward, breath heaving. "Mr. Hayes, we're here because Control reported a single individual prevented a catastrophic rail event." That true Logan slowly set the device down. "It's not just me. Someone inside your system has access. Someone who knows more than they should." A third officer, older grayer, looked at him a long second before saying, "We'll handle the investigation, but right now the entire city owes you a thanks." His tone wasn't flattery. It was the kind of respect you didn't give lightly. The others nodded, some with awe, some with humility. One tech, barely 20, wiped her eyes and whispered, "If you hadn't been here." Logan didn't answer. Not because he didn't understand the weight of the moment, but because the adrenaline was still wearing off, leaving a strange quiet in its wake. Rick climbed the stairs behind the officers, breathless, red-faced, but different. Deflated. He looked at Logan, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time without the filter of superiority. "I told the investigators the truth," Rick muttered. "Everything you said, everything you warned us about. I should have listened earlier." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong about you." Logan gave him a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't bitterness either. Just acknowledgement. Rick had to carry his own reflection now. Hours later, the SUVs had been seized, the tower secured, and the control system formally handed over to federal cyber response units. Logan gave a statement, simple and factual. No embellishment, no dramatics, just what happened. When he finished, the supervisor approached him with a stack of papers and a strange mixture of pride and guilt. "You saved lives tonight," he said. "Your contract here ends next week." Logan blinked. "Excuse me." The supervisor held up a hand. "Let me finish. It ends because we're moving you into a new position. Head of Infrastructure Risk and Safety for the entire South Transit Network. Full salary. Benefits. Day schedule." He paused. "And a team that will actually respect what you bring to the table." For a while, Logan couldn't form words. He'd spent years in the shadows keeping machines alive without anyone seeing the man behind the wrench. Tonight didn't make him a hero, but it reminded everyone, including himself, that he hadn't stopped being one after he left uniform. "I'll think about it," Logan finally said. "No pressure," the supervisor replied, smiling. "But the city needs people like you, and so does your son, Eli." Logan didn't realize how much he needed to hear that until the words settled deep in his chest. Weeks passed. Investigators traced the sabotage back to a private contractor with political ambitions and no conscience, someone who expected the system to collapse quietly, who never expected a night shift mechanic to notice the scent of something foreign in the code. The city publicly thanked the unnamed depot worker who prevented a disaster. Logan asked them not to release his name. It wasn't humility, it was protection. The world didn't need to know more than what mattered the system held. Rick took a leave of absence. When he returned, he was no longer barking orders. He asked questions. He listened. He even apologized to other staff he'd mistreated. Fear hadn't changed him, shame had. Logan accepted the new job. Not for the title and not for the money, but because he'd seen what complacency could cost. Someone needed to stand watch who understood the stakes beyond paperwork. The shift to daylight hours meant he could walk Eli to school more often. They'd talk about dinosaurs, or baseball, or the band performances coming up. And sometimes when they crossed the bridge overlooking the bus yard, Eli would squeeze his hand and say, "Dad, did you really save a bunch of people that night?" Logan always gave the same answer. "I kept things from breaking, that's all." But Eli knew better. Kids always do. Months later, on a crisp fall morning, Logan returned to the tower, not because of an emergency, but because the supervisor wanted to show him a new training room. They'd built a space designed to teach young techs how to spot the warning signs he'd never learned in a classroom, but in heat and sand and chaos. The supervisor gestured at the rows of screens. "None of this would have happened without you. You shifted the culture here." He hesitated. Funny thing about heroes, they never call themselves that. Logan didn't answer. He looked out the window at the city waking below. Buses rolling, trains humming, people moving through their lives unaware of how fragile all of it really was. He stood there a long moment, feeling something settle in him. Not pride, not sorrow, something steadier, like the ground finally leveling under his feet. He headed for the stairs. Eli was waiting at home with a half-finished science project and a kitchen that always needed fixing. Ordinary things. Good things. Somewhere behind him, the supervisor said quietly to a group of new hires, "That man down the stairs, The one who looks like he hasn't slept in a decade. He's the reason you'll go home safe tonight." Logan didn't hear it. He didn't need to. He stepped into the sunlight, shoulders lighter than they'd been in years, and the truth settled deeper than any metal ever had. Sometimes courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a man doing the right thing long before anyone notices and long after the world forgets.